All right. Um, hey everybody, I am producing myself tonight, so pray for me. I have like a quarter or more of my chart is Gemini, and I'm still being affected by this like Mercury in retrograde nonsense. So bear with me. I am waiting to see if my Facebook and YouTube is actually working. So we're going to give this a minute. If not, I'm going to have to redo that. I look good on TikTok. I think I see a bunch of you and I see some hearts. Thank you so much. Please keep tapping the screen. I'm going to wait until I hear something back here from you guys on Facebook and YouTube. All right. Oh, good. Bethany Renner. There we go. And then I have a CGH, a new member. Welcome, new member. All right. We're off to a good start. Welcome, everyone on Instagram. If you could also give me a thumbs up, let me know that you can hear me and see me all right. That would be very helpful. It looks okay. Looks like Instagram. It was giving me trouble also. I couldn't put a title. So for those of you tuning in through Instagram, you're like, what is this? It wouldn't allow me to say. So we are talking about neurodivergence or intuition. That is the topic of tonight. All right, welcome, Chocolate Kiss Demetris. Good to see you guys here on YouTube. Vanessa. All right, and Facebook. Let's go ahead and get right into this. There's a lot to say. Okay, I could stay on this topic literally for hours. So I am really trying to minimize and bring out the most important points of what I wanted to speak on here tonight, because I also have other classes on this. So I've been talking about this for over a decade to the public, and I break it down in some different ways, the 4 different levels of empathic ability, or I'll talk about trauma and intuition and how they're connected, and how, therapy is sometimes, or the doctor's orders are working against you if you're an intuitive. I have a million different classes on this. If you want to learn more, they're all free, except for the official empathic awareness. That's up on my website, ivyriverapsychicmedium.com. But if you want to check out any of the other classes, you can go to YouTube at Ask Ivy and just click under mini classes, and even under Roots Revival, the church services, where I talk about the stuff quite a lot. Okay. But in particular tonight, we are sticking to neurodivergence or intuition. Okay, so welcome everyone. I am your pastor, Ivy Rivera. I'm a psychic medium, a Taino Airwalk, and this is Roots Revival Interfaith, where we believe in the 3 truths in the universe. That is intuitive intelligence, numerology, and astrology. So this topic did not fail me, okay, in the way Spirit always has a way of coming through and giving me some amazing piece of material that fits right in with the sermon topic with Gus Walls. Okay. So for those of you who are watching the election, and even if you're not in America, I'm sure you know something about it. The guy who's running for vice president now is Tim Walz. And he has a son who stood up at the DNC and was so overwhelmed with emotion, was so proud of his father that he was brought to tears. He was not the only one standing up in the audience, but they made it look like he was the only one standing up in the audience, applauding his dad and just cheering him on. And he kept saying to his sister, who was sitting next to him, that's our dad. That's my dad. He was like telling everyone. And I'm not sure exactly how old he is, but he looks like he's in his, maybe early 20s. He's a kid. And it was a beautiful thing. Like it brought me to tears. It brought a lot of people to tears, how proud he was of his father. And I didn't think anything of it. However, the very next day, Republicans started attacking him and calling him weak and saying that this is the threat to masculinity in the world. And this is what will happen if you allow your boys to have emotion. And to express themselves and look at this, horrible scene that he put on and how weird he was for having a normal reaction. It looked normal to me, to being proud of his father. And the attacks just keep coming at him. And this was days ago. Okay. So, what I think is amazing about this is that we now find out that Gus Walsh is dealing with some neurodivergent stuff. And he struggles with communication skills. He was nonverbal for a while. And, he has struggled in the past to regulate his emotions and things like this. And I just think that makes it all the more beautiful because, ta-da, I had launched that this was going to be our topic, and started advertising for it, I want to say a week or two prior, okay, to that ever happening with Gus. So, thank you, universe. Thank you, Spirit, for that, because he is a prime example of how the highly emotionally intelligent and intuitive intelligent in the world, these people that are highly evolved and high vibrational versus the low vibrational, super typical, people who are often toxic and negative, as we saw with the attacks on him. These two worlds may never meet, okay? But those that are high vibrational in the way that Gus is, tend to fall into neurodivergent and or intuitive intelligence categories here. So let's take a look at it and break down. I would love to hear in the comment section how you've experienced this for yourself, or if you have a child, if you're, maybe a teacher, a therapist, you see this a lot with your clients or your students. Please do share your experiences with this, as well as any questions or comments that you may have. I do try here at Roots Revival. We are an interactive church, so I try to get to all your questions and comments at the end. But right now I don't have a producer. So if someone wants to volunteer to grab them from Instagram and TikTok and type them in here on YouTube, that would be great if someone is free to do that. I do want to ask everyone at this time to please give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment of any kind. It does help me out in the algorithm. And if you want to see the different membership options, you can hit the join button to learn more about that. Donations are always appreciated here at, the church. But also, if you have not already done so, post your prayer and healing requests. I do get to every single one of them. And even if you're watching this through like video download later on, once this is published, you can still put up your prayer and healing requests. I check them for several weeks afterward. Okay, so neurodivergence or intuition, similarities, misdiagnoses, and non-representation. So what is intuition? In the way that I'm referring to intuition, and through my Ivy League Psychic Academy, where I train people in psychic mediumship development, I'm always referring to intuition as being three different things. It's a combination of your psychic ability, which is your clairvoyance, your third eye, your higher mind. It's an ability to predict with accuracy and no information being given to you the past, the present, and the future. Okay. Then we have mediumistic abilities. Mediumship is the ability, whether through trance mediumship, meaning physical mediumship, which is sort of like a form of possession. It's direct channeling of a spirit through you, where their words will come out your mouth. It can also be mental mediumship, where spirits are talking to you. You hear it in your head through clairaudience, almost like your own inner voice. Okay, and then you can transfer, if you choose, those messages out to other people. So mediumship is not something you have to believe in to have. Everyone has it to some degree, because spirit doesn't care whether you're a skeptic or not. Spirit doesn't care whether you want the message or not. Spirit's going to do what spirit's going to do. Okay. Same thing with psychic ability. Everyone alive on earth has some psychic ability to a degree, or you would be dead. You're using your gut instinct every day just to stay alive. It's super basic stuff. None of this requires faith of any kind or proof scientifically of any kind, even though we have plenty, okay, for sure. Now, the third category is empathic ability. Empathic ability, I have an empathic awareness class up on my website. I train therapists, teachers, parents. You could check out what fits for you. There are 4 different levels of empathic ability. Empathic ability is ultimately the gift slash curse of reading other people, objects, and atmosphere. It is taking that information from the energy connected to those things and accidentally absorbing it into yourself as an empath, and then having to process all of that. People who aren't using blocking techniques will become overwhelmed. They'll have meltdowns. They won't be able to focus. They're often misdiagnosed with ADD, things like this. And with every level, it gets more and more, intense. On the flip side, empathic ability is supposed to be used for healing yourself and healing the world and energy manipulation and telepathy and all kinds of really phenomenal, let's say, twists that allow for an individual to turn a negative into a positive. When we combine psychic, mediumistic, and empathic ability, I call it the lost language. We're able, through this intuitive intelligence, be able to, perform all kinds of tasks that are considered paranormal or like metaphysical, phenomenons, or, people just simply cannot explain how we're able to do these things, but they're actually extremely common. It's innate and it's not a big deal, at all. The reason most people are out of touch with their intuitive intelligence is because society has taught them to discard it, to never address it, and to entirely block it as much as possible, or else they're going to, the church will say you're going to hell. Your parents will say that you're lying. The education system will say that you're showing signs of mental illness. The medical system will say you're mentally ill and get you on meds, or, get you locked up. And so there are a million reasons from the time of usually 3-4 years old, we're told never, ever to address our intuitive intelligence. And that has led to, in my opinion, the state of the toxic world today. So that's why we're Roots Revival. We are getting you back in touch with your roots, that everyone has. Now, there is no representation, or very little, it's almost a miracle to hear about it, representation of intuitive intelligence in the medical field. Now, a lot of people will say, well, they don't understand it. Maybe. Also, it is a moneymaker for them, to, especially here in America, where we live in a for-profit medical system, to keep you sick or to misdiagnose you or to keep you away from getting in touch with your true power, your inner self, your intuition, and your guidance. If they can keep you away from all of that, you're going to get caught up in a cycle like a mouse on a wheel you're never going to get off of. No medication is going to fix it. It is hugely profitable for the therapeutic and, medical fields to keep you away from your intuition. So I don't believe it is just a state of them not knowing. And I'm going to explain, about, some of the people I've worked with. I won't get to everything here. But, I did have one experience. Here's a good example. I had a gentleman come to me. I was probably teaching empathic awareness to the public for like maybe a year, maybe 2. And I remember this doctor coming in and sitting in the audience of one of my empathic awareness trainings. And afterward, he was like lingering, and he said, can I talk to you about this? And he said, I'm a doctor, I'm a psychiatrist. And he said, you helped one of my patients that I've been dealing with for 8 years. And he said, I do not understand, after like this person taking this class, like how you did that. And he said, what would you say is sort of the core of this whole thing? And I said, well, you have to pay attention to the energy around you, and, energy that's coming in must go back out. And he was like, that's what I always tell my patients. And he said, I tell them that if they were to eat, 12 Big Macs, that they should expect to, after consuming all of that energy, they should expect to get sick, gain weight, and essentially have to work out a lot, and not feel well. He said, so I'm always trying to find a way to explain it to them. he said, and this really broke it down, like this, this was amazing. And I said, well, that is it. I said, right, it's energy transfer, but we have to be familiar with the energy and educated on the energy. And he said, well, you're allowed to say that to them in this way, but I'm not. And I thought, shame on you for now seeing how to explain it, knowing it's true, and that it will help them, that you've witnessed it help them and turn their lives around, and to say, I can't say it that way because if I said it, it would be gitchy, which is essentially what he was saying to me. He was saying, well, you're a weirdo, you're psychic, you're one of these people, so you can come out and say this. And I was like, this is pathetic. So they do know that this is happening and what the root issues are and even how it can be fixed, but they're not willing to share it. So, disappointing. Be mindful of that. Okay. We see that typically what they're willing to do is to categorize anyone who's having a lot of intuition, whether it be psychic, mediumistic, or empathic. They'll categorize you in the DSM-5 under magical thinking, psychosis, possibly even schizophrenia. So they're saying you're having some type of like a manic episode. Okay. And they would prefer to say anything to you than admit that you may actually have intuition. So I started being sent off to doctors when I was 4 or 5 years old for my intuition and my trance states. And I've been told and misdiagnosed with everything under the sun. They would come back and say, sorry, this was a misdiagnosis. Let's go again. Let's go again. Let's go again. I've been on countless medications. I finally cut off all the doctors in my 30s because I was never diagnosed with psychic mediumship. Okay. But they will even say that it's normal for someone to properly, accurately describe a deceased person or experiences that deceased person had that can be proven. And I've been through this and my students have been through this. They'll say that's impossible. You must be wrong in the way you're explaining it. They believe that it can be explained away as psychosis if you can accurately describe a location that you've never been to. They'll say, well, you must have forgotten. Maybe you've been there before. Or if you can precisely prophesize even dates and events. I have prophesized and they will see it come true. And they'll say, well, maybe I don't know how to explain that one, but it's got to be one of these, maybe you're bipolar. Let's take a look at that. It's ridiculous. Okay. So don't let that be your story. So the misdiagnoses that most of my students in the psychic mediumship course come in with are bipolar manic episodes, schizophrenia or psychosis, ADD, ADHD. That's the most common one. And if you have a highly intuitive child, that's probably the first one they're going to get misdiagnosed with. OCD, a slew of anxiety disorders, insomnia, and even personality disorders. And it's really sad when my students come in, whether they're neurodivergent or they're just intuitive, that they have spent years, they've felt as though they've lost years or even some of them decades of their life being misdiagnosed on medications, in and out of hospitals. Usually at least once this happened to them, and they're incredibly frustrated. Also, I just want to explain today that I'm not trying to diagnose anyone. I can't prescribe a diagnose. And if you did receive a diagnosis and you're just relieved to have that diagnosis, we're not trying to take that away from you. All we're trying to do is say, listen, there could be other energetic reasons that a lot of the things that affect you negatively are, and there are ways to cope with that beyond what your doctor or the medications are doing for you. So be open-minded to trying some new techniques. What I found over the years is that my students who come in to train in psychic mediumship or empathic ability often do like interviews or testimonials at the end of the course. And instead of talking about which I appreciate to a degree, instead of talking about sort of like the course and what they're going to do as professional psychic mediums out in the world, they tend to talk about how they came off their medications and how they realized they were misdiagnosed and how they are finally living their life in a healthy manner. And they had been trapped in a cycle for 15 years or 20 years or 8 years or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so, 13 years ago when I started teaching, I started to notice these patterns, and I took a closer look at, why that was. So it is really all at the root about energy maintenance. Okay. Now, what is neurodivergence? Let's talk about this a little bit. So neurodivergent describes people whose brain differences affect how their brain works. They have different strengths and challenges from neurotypical people. Differences include medical disorders, learning disabilities, and other conditions. Neurodivergence is typically connected to people who have autism, ADHD, OCD, Tourette's, dyslexia, dyscalculia. And if you aren't familiar with dyscalculia, I would ask, are you someone who has to count on your fingers, basic math? You can't do simple math. Okay, even if you've been working on it your entire life, okay, that may be you. When we look at Gus Waltz and the way he responded to seeing his father up on stage, the immense amount of pride and emotion that naturally came out of him is a sign of high emotional intelligence. And I know that someone like him who has this depth is also going to have a tremendous amount of intuitive intelligence. Right? I would love to pick the brain of his parents and hear more about how he was intuitively, psychic, mediumistically, and empathically with his development over the years and where he is now. It must be tremendous. And you can count on people who are neurodivergent, and it is being spoken on more, I want to say, in the last 5 years or so, even by the medical community. They are talking more about the intuition that comes along with it. But mostly, if you want to hear about it, you're going to need to get on TikTok. Okay. So for those of you who are tuning in through TikTok, there's a lot of many different channels talking about all types of neurodivergence, and especially even like ADD and the different ways that people with it are using their intuition, okay, daily to thrive and to protect themselves. It's a lot of fun. So, check it out. So there was, before I get into the side-by-side comparisons here of neurodivergence and intuition, I'm going to show you how the way they play out in our lives is often identical. And so where the overlap is here. But I want to say that I had a gentleman who came to me with an autistic son who was, I believe, 12, maybe 13 at the time. And he said that the empathic awareness class that focuses exclusively on energy absorption, okay, which is a huge part of intuition and neurodivergence. Energy absorption from others, atmospheres, objects, spirit. He came in for the class. He brought it back to his son, who was autistic and struggling a lot with daily functioning. He said that class changed him and made such drastic improvements to his life, his skill set, his ability to do more, advance more on his own. He asked me to come and start. He ended up being a superintendent of a public school system, and he had me come teaching it there. So I've also, taught this at universities. I train therapists now. I train educators, teachers, parents on how to do this. I'm telling you that if you pay attention to the things I'm about to break down, it's going to work for you. Okay. Or your child, your student, what have you. So when we put side by side intuition and neurodivergence, we're looking at a few key categories. I don't have time to get to all of it. Okay. So the most important things that stand out, similarities between the two, we have social communication difficulties. In particular, making eye contact. So, what intuitives in the audience notice you can't make eye contact with people, but you haven't been diagnosed as neurodivergent. If you look at people so intensely, you get a flood of TMI, way too much information about this person's personal business, about their physical ailments, about their emotional state. You get pulled in to the point where your face may go numb, your tongue tingling in the hands, translucent lines cross your vision, loss of vision, vomiting. So intuitives tend to not feel comfortable making eye contact with people. We see the same thing with neurodivergence, pretty much across the board, mostly with autism. Okay, but it's a respect. I think the way most of us think of it is not that we're being disrespectful in communication, that we have poor communication skills. We think this is our communication skills at their prime. We know that you have personal business and we don't want to know it. And we want to respect ourselves and what our bodies and energy levels are capable of handling by keeping some personal space. So I like to think of a neurodivergence and intuition as not being disabilities as much as we are other abled. And I think it's the wave of the future. I think we need more personal space, not less. I think that we learned a lot about that during COVID. Okay. So, it's nothing to be ashamed of, but that is why we struggle with it. Now, not reading body language, okay, is another issue with neurodivergence, meaning not picking up on social cues. If someone's uncomfortable, if someone's angry, if someone's really upset. And I think that when we're talking about intuitives doing this, it's often because we need a lot of personal space. Even if we are at a party or we've decided to go to a dinner or we're at a concert, even when we're engaging with something that we agreed to do, we thought we wanted to do, once we get there, we still need a lot of personal space. And afterward, we may spend days alone. Now, what happens with the whole body language thing is that you're similar to the eye contact. You're trying not to overly engage with someone else so that their information doesn't accidentally, right, involuntarily absorb into you and you become overwhelmed. You have emotional meltdowns. You can't be there anymore. So I think that for neurodivergence, not being able to read body language is part of, the sort of neuroatypical stuff that's going on there. I think that for intuitives, it's again that boundary setting. Like, I don't even want to really look at you, okay, because it's going to be too much and I would like to spend some time here with you. We also see both like to sleep alone. I think that's a brilliant idea. I think especially if you plan on having a love partner or if you plan to get married. I think even having separate houses is a brilliant idea. All right. Because again, neurodivergence and intuitives absorb all the information from someone else. Okay. So when you're supposed to be in your sacred time of rest and recuperation during sleep, and you have someone right next to you, all you're doing is working, okay, all night. Another area, let's move on to another one. Okay, so another side-by-side comparison here is speech and language challenges. So one of the common things that we see with neurodivergence is stuttering and repetition. I see this a lot also in my intuitive students and even myself, especially if I'm going in and out of trance states. I will also have entire memory loss of things that I said. So when I was talking, like I don't know how it came out. Sometimes we're just not even in control of that. Again, because it's trance and we won't remember it. Speech does change for mediums when mediums are channeling, or even if you're having a vision, a prophecy, clairvoyance is kicking in. Your speech may change quite a lot of stuttering, nervousness, feeling just discombobulated in general, causing repetition and detachment because it's uncomfortable, comes from empathic ability, especially at the third and the fourth levels. Being speechless. Where are my intuitives here who understand that sometimes you simply cannot talk? You just cannot even function. I think it's very comparable to what happens with people, neurodivergence with ADD, where it's like a shutdown. Your brain is just doing so much. Okay. People with ADD and other forms of neurodivergence, I've heard them say this. It's like you have 15 tabs open in your brain all at once. And with psychics and mediums, but empaths at the higher levels also, it's like 10,000 voices in your head at once. Well, that's a real thing. And you can't process it all. It's not humanly possible. And so you just sort of shut down, and you may look like you're having a normal interaction with someone, but you just literally cannot even formulate a thought or one more thing. You cannot speak. You're just speechless, and you can't explain why. All right, let's move on to another one. Learning challenges. We are currently, if you're just tuning in right now, we're talking about the side-by-side comparison of intuition and neurodivergence. Learning challenges. A lack of focus. Difficulty reading. Difficulty with calculation. Difficulty in following verbal instructions, and difficulty in executive functioning. So what I mean by executive functioning is using important skills for your day-to-day life, memory, a lot of memory loss. This is huge with intuitives. Again, I want to hear you in the comment section. Do you ever just wonder where your brain is gone? Why do I not remember things? Okay. Some of us even years of our lives, and it wasn't due to trauma. It's just gone. Also, self-control. So this is a big one, because again, let's go back to Gus Walls, right? That was not necessarily a moment where he should have been using self-control. He's at the DNC. Everyone was partying so hard. People are so excited, right? That's his dad. There's no reason he should have been using self-control. And he has amazing parents and his sister, and everybody was like, let it out. Like, absolutely. Everyone's like celebrating with him. But if he wanted to use self-control in that moment, he may not have been able to, and that's where it's different for us. Intuitives, neurodivergence, you really can't sometimes get the upper hand without a lot of skills, and you're using tools and behavioral modification, and it's very draining. Okay, so there's a lot of this showing up in kids that we have to be careful for. I think if you have an intuitive child and your child is being misdiagnosed with something like ADD, none of the meds are working, none of the treatments are working, blah, blah, blah. They're not sure that's the right thing. You may want to take a look at the empathic kids class or the intuitive kids class, or look at, do you have a highly intuitive child? Because they will get overwhelmed by just even simple things that don't overwhelm anyone else, large groups of people, loud noises, bright lights. We're going to get to all that stimulus. And, they're having these, what looks like meltdowns or agitated outbursts, and they're struggling to really focus or control themselves. Okay. But you're looking in the wrong place for that. I remember my mother, who was horribly abusive, her and my uh, older sibling laughing at me and making actual charts to pick on me. And they would draw out these charts about how many emotional breakdowns I was having per day. It's the kind of thing where you're, especially if you're young, you're trapped in a cycle because the doctors aren't giving it to you straight. Your parents are maybe at a loss or they're horrible or whatever. You know what I mean? And the teachers really have no clue what to do with you. So you're just living in this sort of low level existence, blaming yourself and feeling like it's you and there's something wrong with you for not being able to regulate. So that is a huge similarity between the two. We also see that with the reading, even if maybe you did, do well with English, whatever, the language arts, reading and writing, you may have hit a lot of kids, including myself, hit third or fourth grade as intuitives and completely lost the ability to read and write. Was it neurodivergence and something is misdiagnosed, or was it the intuition reaching such a peak at that age that you literally lost those skills and abilities? Now, I was able to go on a special bus and reconnect with it, but it took about a year. And I see this with my students all the time. They lost the ability to read and write out of the blue at around third or fourth grade. We already talked about the calculation, the math, right, which is called dyscalculia. Interesting. Okay, so that's just, at a basic level, not being able to do like rudimentary mathematical skills. Adding, subtraction, you're constantly using your fingers. Maybe you were always rushed at school. Heaven forbid you had to go up to the chalkboard or something like that. You're probably the last one standing all the time, right? And you may be blaming that and thinking, well, I was traumatized at school, with all these like races and math tests and maybe this came first. It's a lot of what came first, the chicken or the egg, okay, with neurodivergence and intuition and these, other abilities or disabilities. The ability to follow verbal instructions is major. Most of my students, whether we're online, they're in person, I'm at a university, and when I go to the universities, or if I'm instructing at public schools, I've learned to have the screen, handouts, and I'm talking. And they still complain, like, I can't hear you. I can't learn that way. And I'm like, well, I don't know what else you want. Like, I think, and here's what I force my students to do is write. I make them write because I can't write you can't write everything out. You write it down. And that's how they connect to the information, is if I make them write every single little thing down, right? And it bothers some people, but for the most part, they're like, this is actually working. So there is a disconnect between hearing things as a neurodivergent or an intuitive and being able to process almost any of it, or maybe you catch a couple pieces of it, but it's just not going anywhere. Okay. So maybe if you're going to be spoken to verbally with instructions, you also have to say, send me an email, send me a hard copy of that, or where can I go to the website to read it again? Because I cannot make a decision based on what you're saying to me. Okay. So that is super duper common in both. Let's move on to another one. This is huge. Hypersensitivity to stimulus. That is being bothered, or being, I compare it to being like the Wicked Witch. Was it the Wicked Witch of the West on The Wizard of Oz when she had water thrown on her? It's like when lights come on, heaven forbid they should be like these fluorescent lights in like the grocery store, or God forbid Walmart, or really anywhere. When the bright lights come on, it's like you're shrinking, you're melting. It's literally painful. Okay. Same thing with loud noises. And that's tough if you're kind of an extrovert, or you really love music, or you love concerts, or you love parties. But then as your neurodivergence is acting up, or your intuition is increasing, those loud noises are going to become more like nails down a chalkboard to you. Your tolerance level is like zilch, usually, maybe 20 minutes, okay, at best. Crowds of people. Oof. Hot and cold weather, okay, environments. I think that especially when we look at the crowds, this is something a lot of my students, intuitive students, struggle with because they feel socially isolated. They feel that being around people, whether it be shopping, a party, even having dinner with family, can be so painful and draining energetically, immediately draining to them, that they're having emotional meltdowns. They're having irritable outbursts. They don't even recognize themselves anymore. And ladies, this is super common with a pregnancy and with postpartum. A lot of the reasons, treatment isn't working for your depression, anxiety, and social anxiety stuff after pregnancy or childbirth is because a lot of it is this. Okay. So it may not be something a pill can fix. It leads to a lot of isolation for neurodivergence and intuitives, a lot of isolation and depression in general. Okay. So again, you're confused. Am I an extrovert? I thought I was. Why do I feel like such an introvert? Why are these things bothering me, so much? The heat, the hot and the cold, you're just hypersensitive, okay, to things, and your body just reacts in what seems like very dramatic ways. And so you have to always be aware of these things. All right, we're not going to get into a ton about like how to manage all this today. I don't have time for that. If you guys want to see part 2, let me know. All right, but these are incredibly similar. We used to joke that we would be holding classes. I had this school, I had the Ivy League Psychic Academy in this big brick old, like 200-year-old building, 250 years old. We were at the corner, and people would come up to the door and be like, ready to go in the crystal shop and stuff. And they would say, "What the heck, are you guys open?" And we would all joke how we would like pop up from a dark room where we were all taking a class, and like scare the hell out of people who would come in there to shop because it would look like we were closed. We were teaching. We were all in a lighting that was comfortable for us. So everyone was sitting on the ground, on these poofs with like orange dim lighting. It was very peaceful and quiet. And that's just how we taught. That's how we all liked it. It was hilarious. But you have to create and control your environment as much as you possibly can, even if you're, around a bunch of other people or living with other people. I think teachers should be doing more of this. Okay. Get rid of that hideous fluorescent lighting in the classroom. All right. Let's look at another category here. Unusual physical activity, like stinting, like spinning around, okay, rocking, tics, verbal outbursts, or yelling, or blurting things out. I think that a lot of this is connected to autism. You guys let me know in the comment section if you know other forms of, obviously Tourette's, if you know other forms of neurodivergence where this is common, because that's mostly something I think of as, autistic tendencies. But we see with ADD and OCD, a lot of the rocking, the clicking of a pen, the fidget toys that finally came out for kids in recent years. I remember as a kid tapping my knee, so constantly. If I was sitting at the desk, I was tapping, I was shaking, I was moving. Well, we also see this with mediums. If you watch old school mediums, especially from like the 1800s, when they would get up on stage and they would channel a spirit for like hours, they rock. They do weird things with their hands. Okay. They do weird things with their heads. And so like, I'm always telling my students when they're like, I'm embarrassed, I look crazy, or, this is freakish to see. I say, it's normal. It's what we've learned to control it, but it's energy coming out, it's what do you want it to look like? You know what I mean? Who cares? So it's just really, I think, allowing for these types of things to become more mainstream. We're okay with like Puerto Ricans and Italians talking with their hands all the time. Well, what's the difference? You know what I mean? This is just another expression. There's nothing, wrong with it. But it is super common, and because of societal standards, it can make both groups very uncomfortable, or they feel like they've constantly got to like explain themselves, or they have to mask it. They're constantly trying to hide it, and when you do that, it can cause a lot of other problems, especially mentally. Okay, it's just not really healthy. So I think it's best to let it out. So let's move on to the last category here. And then I have like the most common thing I see with both. Okay. Is inflexibility. All right. So another category, inflexibility, an inability to adapt or to change interests based on age or situation. I think that when we're talking about intuitives doing this, it can feel like a stunted development at times. It usually happens shortly after a major increase in your intuitive abilities, like you had a baby, or you were pregnant, or you had a health condition, a surgery, a car accident, a divorce, a trauma, a job loss, a loss of a loved one, loss of a pet. I mean, after, and we increase every 5 to 6 years. I think after a major increase, this is more common to see where you sort of get stuck. You get sort of, you have less of an ability to adapt. It takes a lot more work. Okay. And you really don't want to be changing. You're getting very in the box and stifled. Okay. In the way that you live. And for neurodivergence, I've worked again with therapists and teachers and parents who have said that the empathic awareness has led to the greatest improvement for their student or child or patient. The empathic awareness training I have, because it's teaching them how to identify the energies and manage the energies. And I think that's universal. As people feel more confident in understanding what they're experiencing, and then feeling more empowered by learning whether you're going to engage with that, or making the decision not to engage with that, or if you are going to engage with it, how to process it at the end, how to cleanse it out, how to get rooted and grounded, how to stay rooted and grounded. The more you learn these tools and these skills, the more able you are to shake it up a little bit. You're able to kind of relax. You can do different things. We can think outside the box. So that's huge. Okay. For everybody. The number one most common shared behavior between intuitives and neurodivergence is masking. The exhaustion of masking all the time. What is masking? Masking, for those of you that aren't familiar, is hiding. It's faking it. It's trying to fit in. It's being punished for not fitting in. It's learning to sort of discipline yourself and kind of grind yourself into a much smaller version of what you're really experiencing, who you are, how you feel, how you're perceiving the world and experiencing everything, instead of sharing all of that and being real, you're shrinking yourself to fit in with the neurotypicals around you. And it, again, causes a lot of mental problems, depression, and, physical problems, blood pressure and stress, and, all kinds of things also. But I think mostly it's just being so drained and so exhausted, you don't really want to do anything or deal with anyone anymore, and you feel like the only time you could really be yourself is when you're alone. Anyone have this? How are we doing here? Hey, everyone on TikTok, please give this some hearts. Instagram. Okay, I want to start hearing from you guys. I'm going to be taking your questions and comments here in a minute, and your prayer and healing requests. Please do post them if you haven't done so already. Feel free to drop a donation. Always appreciated. Please give this video a thumbs up. Drop a comment of any kind. It does help me out in the algorithm. And please do subscribe. If you want to become a member here on YouTube at Ask Ivy, hit the join button to see the different tiers of membership options. Also, for those of you that weren't here earlier, I don't have a producer tonight. Like, I'm just kind of winging this. Okay. I'm doing my best. So if any of you want to go collect the questions from Instagram and TikTok, questions or comments, and post them here on YouTube, I can pop them up on the screen. Okay. So if someone wants to be my moderator, that would be great. No pressure, but I can only see from Facebook and YouTube. Okay. I can't see from Instagram and TikTok. So I love you guys, but I have no idea what you're saying. Okay. So I'll have to go back over that stuff later. All right. So let's talk about what unusual skills does this lead to? So we've talked about what I like to call other abled, okay, or the medical community would say like, oh, it's disabilities. But let's look at the stuff that's typically seen by everyone as being like master skills. Okay, what does this mean if you're neurodivergent or you're highly intuitive? Again, here's a side-by-side comparison. I'm telling you, identical, okay? And again, I'm not trying to prescribe a diagnosis. I'm not saying if you're neurodivergent or you've been diagnosed with it that you're not, that you're intuitive. And I'm not saying if you're intuitive that you're neurodivergent, you need to go get a diagnosis. I'm saying they overlap in so many different ways. Sometimes it really is a mix. And it's good for you to know, so that you can better manage the energies. But at the root of all of it is energy coming from people, spirit, places, meaning atmospheres, and objects. And that's where we need to focus on managing both. Okay. So let's talk about the unusual skills of benefit here. Number one, hyper focus. When you can focus on a topic or an activity for an extended period of time. This leads people to tremendous amounts of success. Okay. Like, I really think I enjoy hanging out with other neurodivergents. And I was diagnosed with OCD when I don't remember a time in my life when I didn't know I had it. I would get in trouble at school. They would write letters home to my mother. She's tapping on things. I would have to count out. My number was 4. So I had to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 in a square. And if a teacher interrupted me while I was doing it, get back to your seat. I told everyone to sit down and open your books. I would have to start over. And every time I was interrupted, I had to add on so that I had a full set of 4. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 times. And it was an impossible way of living, but it was a way for me to just sort of control to the best of my ability, right? Everything that was going on. And so while that's a more negative form of hyperfocus, I've also used it to build businesses. I've used it to raise children and graduate as a single mother with a journalism degree. I've used it to buy up properties and do things that I was told would never be possible at my age. I've used it for a million different things. I can hyper focus on anything that I feel really passionate about at the time for extended periods of time and excel beyond anyone else around me in that area. Okay. And so, we see this a lot with ADD too. I want to say neurodivergence in general. And I have seen this in my psychic mediumship students. My God, when they focus on something, they will often even learn how to do this in the course and then come out. One of my students who just graduated, she now is like some kind of record deal, right? She's like singing. I mean, she's like, they come out as artists and musicians and like performers. And I mean, crazy things happen, right? So anyways, it is definitely all connected. So this hyper focus, another area, I like to call this other genius. So medically, they kind of think of it as like outside the box thinking. So what is this other genius or outside the box thinking? It's something similar to what you would see at the gifted and talented schools. So, for example, my kids had really high IQ and they were able to test into gifted and talented school. And what a lot of the students there were dealing with was stuff like autism. And even though they would have a lot of trouble with things like basic skills like communication skills or language, they would have other genius, and they would be like mathematical geniuses or the savants, or they would be like, coming up with, and this was really the whole school had stuff like this going on, master solutions to major, even like political or governmental issues that had never been dealt with. And it would just be at the school fair. You know what I mean? Like it was no big deal to them with a gold medal on it. And they figured it out in like a week, I mean, they were amazing. So it's just a different way of thinking. So this other genius, it leads to innovative solutions to challenges that no one else can figure out. Another category here is strong observational skills and attention to detail. Neurodivergents are the bullshit detectors. Intuitives, especially high-level empaths, are also the bullshit detectors. So you can't fool these people. They will literally feel your energy coming and like physically turn off to you, so that when you're talking your BS, they go deaf. They can't even hear you, or there's a weird humming sound, or they have this weird vibration at the back of their, I mean, we all have the same stuff. We all react to people that are not being authentic in the same way. And again, this could sometimes look like poor social skills, but I think it's brilliant. They are the best energy readers. Okay. And so let's go back to Gus again, Gus Walls, real quick. It's probably the last time I'm bringing him up today. He's my new favorite person. I want a t-shirt with him on it or something. So when I was watching him, before I knew he was neurodivergent for sure, I thought, wow, he's really feeling it, but like didn't seem odd to me. But when I found out, I thought, my God, intuitives and neurodivergence absorb, because you're absorbing the energy. Imagine what that must have been like for him at the DNC. All that energy, all that power, all that passion, all that hope, all that love, right? That we've been starving for like a decade. I mean, all of it coming out of all these people, all that music, right? All that inspiration. And then to see his dad, right? Probably the person he loves more than anyone in the world, up on the stage, the center of attention. Talk about overload. My God. I mean, that must have been phenomenal for him. Okay. But he is an energy reader. That's what he does. All right, let's move on to another category here. Superior ability to recognize patterns. So neurodivergence, intuitives, I have noticed both do this. Patterns in symbols, patterns in numbers, patterns in the way people behave, patterns in the environments. Okay, just like patterns of any kind. We spot them. We understand that they are their own unique language, and we use them for messaging systems, information, and to basically explain to us what our next move ought to be. We understand everything in the universe based on patterns, codes, and symbology. Natural skills of both, and this is the last one in this category. Natural skills for both music, art, tech, science. Here's what I tell my psychic mediumship students and my empathic students. You're a right brain thinker, okay? Anything on the left logical side of your brain, problem solving, book learning, right? Functioning capitalistic society, all that jazz is secondary, okay, by far, to your right brain thinking, which is intuition, artistic ability, creativity. This is where if one of my psychic mediumship students wants to learn how to give professional readings, I tell them, I train them, shut off this side of your brain, go over to the right side of your brain. Now, when you shift into the right side of your brain, and this is why I have a lot of students who graduate who are all of a sudden like artists, they're painters, they're sculptors, they're photographers, they're publishing books. Like I said, that one girl just got a music deal. Like she has like a label coming. I'm like, this is crazy. It's amazing, right? But when you tap, that's all the right side of your brain. And so those are just natural skills and abilities, that we all have, neurodivergence and intuitives. And I want to say a level of authenticity. I think that's the most beautiful thing. Active listening, even if it doesn't always seem to be that, it is. And authenticity, real people. We fake it enough for the world. We're not good at faking it in relationships with others. If we love you, we love you. If we say we love you, we love you. If we say we've got your back, we are the most loyal. We're the real deal. I think of is it Love on the Spectrum? Is that what it was? Is that what it was called? Love on the Spectrum. If you guys ever want to watch something super duper sweet, check that out. I want to say it was season 2. The American version, I think, was my favorite. All right. And in closing, and then I'm going to get to your questions and comments. Okay. In closing, if you're listening to some of this and you're like, God, I wonder if I am neurodivergent. You're like, I was never diagnosed. You're like, I don't think I am. It doesn't run in my family. I talk here on YouTube, again, in the mini classes or in Roots Revival. You can see some of my previous classes, and they're all free, on trauma and intuition, for example. Or I think it's called like the 20 reasons your intuition gets triggered, or intuitive increases, right? I've got a bunch of stuff like this. Empathic awareness. Trauma and intuition is a real thing. And it is possible to also become neurodivergent or neurodiverse, let's say, as a result of physical or emotional injury or trauma. For those of you that are on TikTok, you may want to switch over to YouTube at Ask Ivy now, because TikTok hates me always. They shut down my lives, and they're about to do it in a minute. So YouTube at Ask Ivy, switch on over now. So yes, you can become more neurodiverse after a physical or emotional trauma or injury. And ladies, again, that includes pregnancy. Okay, pregnancy and childbirth. So you may have grown into this. Absolutely. That is possible. I think that in order for people to really heal, to heal ourselves, to heal others, and to thrive with either of these abilities, to use them to the maximum benefit, because again, I don't see them as disabilities. I see this as being other-abled. We need to focus on the healing aspect, knowing that neurodivergence and intuitives are the natural healers of the world. Yes, healing ourselves while healing others. That we need to learn how to get in control of it. That's at the root of all of this. And using the skills in like psychic mediumship course, the empathic awareness class, again, you guys are going to learn how to control the amount of energy you absorb, what to do if and when you choose to, how to block, how to transfer out, how to identify where the energy is coming from. So control is a huge part of it. And this is really what lessens the difficulties, the symptoms that are not pleasant, or you can entirely lose those negative symptoms. It depends on what you have going on. And also excelling in our abilities. To know that we have a certain kind of genius is the polar opposite of what anyone has ever told us. For all the years that you were picked on, you were isolated, you were ostracized, all the ways you learn to adopt that and start doing that to yourself. Know how special you are in the best way. You have incredible emotional, energetic, and intuitive intelligence. And this is the wave of the future. The old world is dying out. The patriarchy, the capitalism, the toxicity, the neurotypical world. And it's our time to shine as we go forward. So it's time to celebrate it and embrace it and explore it. Okay. And not be afraid to do that. Let's move on to questions and comments. I will do the best I can. Let's hope I don't. Divinity Rose Tarot 333 says, I needed to hear this today. I've been ostracized at work. Yeah. It's so hard. And I'm sure you've really gotten sick and tired of trying to fit in with people. Try to see people who aren't vibing with you as being problematic and really revealing themselves, because most people who are bothered by a neurotypical or an intuitive are bothered because it's almost like the light that you shine is blinding them and revealing their toxicity. Okay. They don't like that. People don't like to be confronted with that type of thing. And even though you're not trying to confront them with anything, you're just being you, you're doing you, they feel that and they're offended by it. Okay. So it speaks more to them than you. We love you here. We're happy to have you here. You get that paycheck. Okay. Don't let them take what's yours. Let's see if I can shift to another one. Kimberly Murchison Pachu says, I feel like it's all for a purpose and we have to be in the presence of the present moment. We're all learning and we're all special. Yes, 100%. And I think that especially when, you're struggling with so much energy absorption, it's really hard to be present. It's really hard to be there. And again, that's why we talk about learning how to manage it at this level, not with medication, not with some diagnosis you think is going to fix things, not with like giving up, because a lot of these diagnoses really say, okay, now you have this, and it means you have all these disabilities, give up, and we can't do that. We still have to do the work. We still have to manage the energy, and that allows us to be centered and to really celebrate where we are. Oh, let's see. Rachel Spade says, Ivy, I can understand about all the tabs and files going off at once. This happened to me at work last week. I'm on an LOA now. Do you think this is my intuitive skills leveling up? I'm going to a doc. Well, and then Divinity Rose just posted, I just started meds. I'm on day 3 and I feel worse. Okay. Again, you guys, I'm not trying to prescribe or diagnose, and you can book a reading with me anytime and I can take a closer look at it, or a medical intuitive read with me and I can take a closer look at it, whatever you want. But I think it's really important for you to take ownership over your health and not be dictated to by some doctor in a profession that's based on white Christian males for a for-profit medical system. I think you need to be very careful, very, very, very careful. Okay. And I've been there and I get it, but just go slow. Okay. Go real slow. I believe that we are increasing with our intuition. And again, you can check out the, I think it's called 20 intuitive increases, or 20 reasons for intuitive increases, here on YouTube at Ask Ivy. It's either under the mini class playlist or it's under the Roots Revival, Rachel. You can watch that and you tell me if you think you're increasing with your intuitive abilities. Okay. I've broken it all down there for you. Definitely worth looking at. Okay. And then Kim says, I am a human lie detector. Absolutely. And I notice patterns going together. Kaiman Z's mom says, yes, I would like a part 2, please. Okay. Anyone else interested in a part 2? Also, if you're posting that you would like a part 2 to this, let me know what you would like to see included in that, or if you have any questions in particular you would like to have me answer. Okay. And then we have Rachel Spade saying, I agree with the lighting situation. I cannot tell you how important it is to have a couple different things, right? As a highly intuitive and or neurodivergent, and I am both, but what I need and what I found most people can do better with on a daily basis if they work this into their daily lifestyle, right? Is quiet in the home where you can control things, quiet in the home, and nice lighting, and taking time to just let your brain process things. I remember doing a few interviews and they would ask me, what do you do for fun? And I was like, I'm going to sound like such a freak, but I'm just going to say it. Like, I don't see any point in coming up with lies on a personal interview. So I started being honest about it, and the reactions were hilarious. They would say, what do you enjoy doing when you're not doing this, or when you can turn the spirits off and this and that, and not hear noises and voices? What do you enjoy doing? And I said, I enjoy sitting in a dark room and staring off into space. That's it, with nothing, without being bothered. I'm doing nothing. I enjoy doing nothing, and I will do nothing for hours. And I didn't know at the time how healthy that was and how much we really, really need that. And everyone had such a funny reaction to it. They'd be like, that's amazing, or that's really interesting, or like, I do that, like everyone thought they were so weird. It's good for us. Okay. So keep on your lighting. And this is for people dating too, okay? Or if you want to have company over at your house, or if you kind of like to entertain, be mindful of us, okay? When you go into someone's house, or I've just not even finished dating guys who had this. I go in their house, they got like football blaring, and they got like 3 TVs on, and they got like radio, they got like bright lights in every single room. It's just too much. My God, it's like, calm down. Like, I think that for a lot of people and the world around us, it's a reflection of what people have going on the inside. It's chaos, it's noise, there's no one being centered or rooted and grounded. There's no simplicity to it. There's no balance. It's just noise, coming at you. It's like a freaking video game, and it's too much. It's too much. So just be mindful of your company. I think I'm going off on a tangent. I don't even remember what I was talking. Okay. So anyways, let's move on to another one. Sorry guys, I'm learning how to work this thing. Okay, here we go. Here's another one. Let's see from, there it is. Okay, Julie Reynolds says, can you talk about children who are sensitive to spirit and their guides, and how to nurture this so they don't block it when they get older? Well, I mean, you're an amazing parent for asking this question, or whatever, auntie, teacher, whatever, all of it, mentor, right? Them having people like you is going to make all the difference in the world. And all you really have to do with the kid is to remind them, because they are pretty resilient and they're pretty stubborn, right? And they know the truth, and they're not going to back down easily. It has to be broken and beaten out of them. I mean, it's so sad. But really, if there's someone like you just saying, it's okay, talk to me about that. What did you experience? I'm so curious. Me too. Let's share. Those simple things will keep them more on track than what you realize. And if you want an official training, there's an intuitive kids class and an empathic kids class up on my website, where they can also be with other kids. And it is video download. Okay. And then we have Kimberly says, your empathic awareness class helped me, and it still took time to get into automatic writing. Yes. Another thing you guys could do for stress management is automatic writing or drawing, almost like meditational, okay? Allowing for the channeling of energy and spirit to come through you, the pen, the markers, the paint, whatever it is. Rachel Spade says, my problem was always math. Yes. And I still count on my fingers. Literally, when we do the live shows and you guys are getting a $5 question or a $10 question, every single time one comes through, I have to calm my anxiety and I have to count out on my fingers. I'm counting out 2 minutes or 4 minutes. I don't know how I'm alive sometimes. Okay. So it's a lot. It may not, change a lot in time. I mean, this is where you have to say, is it a neurodivergent issue? And okay, maybe I just have to make extra time for that. So we have Vanessa here saying, yes, I definitely have trouble remembering things way back, and I just cannot recall things. That is, and I would like to hear from more neurodivergent people, how that seems to you, how that affects you, what your opinions are on that. But from the intuitives that I work with, the majority of the time, we have all reached a point where we've just accepted that we cannot blame it on trauma. We can't, blame it on some type of medication. We simply have gaps in time. And it's not the same as blacking out because again, it's sometimes months or years where we don't recall things. Okay. And that just seems to be part of it. Here's a question. Can you explain the difference between spaces when we feel, hear, and know everything, and it's been called spiritual psychosis? Right. So when you have, an increase in messaging coming through, or you haven't blocked properly, so you're absorbing, okay, or your psychic ability is kicking in and you're receiving all kinds of visions. When these things happen, you're going to feel overwhelmed. And when you have all three happening at once, you're going to feel amazing overwhelm, almost like the 15 tabs in your brain, are open. So you have to get educated on breaking down what category everything fits in. Okay, so that's part of the empathic awareness training. That's the psychic mediumship course as a whole in a nutshell. It's figuring out, is this psychic? Is this mediumistic? Is this empathic? And then as you can categorize, break it down more. Well, where is it coming from? What is it telling me? What do I want to do with it? So it's all about skill learning. Okay, I think I got to pretty much everyone. I'm not sure. Again, I want to invite you guys to please post your prayer and healing requests. And if you are watching this once it's published, I will be getting to them even later on. Also, if you have additional questions and comments and this, is published, you're watching it later, please do also post those and whether or not you would like a part 2 to this. Okay, yes. And Rachel Spade on closing says, this brings me back to Walmart. Oh God. She said, overhead lights and blaring TVs get on my nerves. Yup. And for some people, it's just annoying. I think, I don't know how some people love that trash, right? For some of us, it's just annoying. For others, it is literally painful and it will absolutely cause a full emotional, physical, an energetic meltdown. So we really need to do the best we can to be mindful of others around us, of, creating a sacred space for ourselves when we can. Maybe we're not sharing that space. But I also think that we need to move into a world that is friendlier to neurodivergence, whether it be waking up later in the morning or even waking up in the afternoon or sleeping, night owl syndrome, sleeping at different times, sleeping during the day instead of at night, lowering the noise and the bright lights and the constant talking and, pontificating and the energy going out, talking at you. It's like the world is shouting at you all the time. And if you're not participating in that, people will say, well, what's wrong with you? Are you shy? Is something wrong? No, we're just done hearing you. We're done. We're done with you. We need to calm things down and get back on track to a more peaceful, centered, rooted, and grounded place. So I think that's where the world is headed. And I think it's very exciting because they've had their day. It's time for us to have ours. This is exhausting. All right, you guys, have a great night. Thanks again for being here. And I will see you guys probably Wednesday. I think I have another show coming up. If you want to book a reading or a healing with me, or check out the empathic awareness class. In the meantime, go to Ivy Rivera, psychicmedium.com. Have a great night.